I'm going to kind of sway away from my speech, I think, just so we can integrate a different experience of spirituality from someone of my generation. So firstly, thank you for thinking of me and allowing me to speak here today. And just for those of you that are less familiar with me, the main reason why I've been asked to speak today is not only because Sri Ganapati Temple is our resident home temple, but as through the introduction it was said that I am a yoga teacher here. More than calling myself a yoga teacher, I'd like to say I'm an avid practitioner of yoga. And I also learn Carnatic vocal here from the senior vocal teacher, Auntie Manorama Prashad. So today, I'm not going to talk to you about the intellectual connection, as I understand it, of Carnatic music and yoga. I have written an article about it that's in the souvenir that you can pick up and see today. But today I thought, as I'm here in front of you, it's more important to speak about my personal journey, my experience, and how I have come to this path from quite a rebellious child to now a spiritual child. And I would like to hope that our people of my generation, if they're in the audience, they're probably upstairs for the parallel youth session, to one, be able to relate to my experience, but more importantly for the older generation to relate to my experience as a guardian of someone of my generation, because the gaps between, dare I say, yours and our generation is quite big. And those gaps, how do we understand it and close it? Because what a rich, amazing, beautiful, intellectual culture this is. But we don't have the Tamil, we don't have the Tamil sense to understand it properly. So I think my experience, I hope this speech serves its purpose. I'm going to be raw and honest about my life. And hopefully you can take something away from this and speak to your children a bit more endearingly and not force them to follow a culture that maybe some of you don't always fully understand as well. So my birth given name is Valli. I was born to a traditional Sri Lankan Tamil family. My mother, Sarada Devi, who's avidly videoing me there in the corner, and my father, Nadraja Sundaram, who is no longer with us, but definitely here in spirit. It would be representative to say that I was part of the vast majority of first-generation Sri Lankan Tamils who was born in this country. And an important point to note, which I'll talk about later. But I was born into quite a large family, both from my dad and my mum's side. I'm very lucky to say we had a very fun, loving, colourful childhood, which was provided by my parents, my aunties, uncles, who are also in the crowd today as well. And they provided this to us despite coming from a very struggled situation back home. So they're carrying trauma within them, but they're trying to shelter us from it. And that's something important that we need to realise as well. But our families, despite all of this, did expose us to our culture, and our religion through bringing us to places like the temple. So I was brought to the temple since a very young age to pursue spiritual studies, balavikas, music and violin, everything I learned in this temple through the resident teachers at the time. My family didn't push me into learning Tamil as a language at the time, so my Tamil was learnt through dialogue at home, having our grandma living with us, through Tamil movies, something that, although we're born in this country, we can really relate to our culture through movies because, as Swami said before, the music in movies, wow, we all connect to it, we get it, we can relate. What it does to our hearts, our souls is very nourishing. So that's how I knew how to learn, or how I learned Tamil, and again, dialogue through the family. But this was childhood. Not before long, teenagehood kicked in. And those wonderful years where we feel very entitled, self-righteous, and all-knowing, that teenage life. And in the process of discovering myself as a soon-to-be adult and being further exposed to the Western society that I was brought up in, it was really hard trying to navigate a family of Eastern culture and a society, a Western society. How are we meant to navigate all of that? When my parents are telling me not to go out with your friends, stay at home, study and go to the temple, that seemed very disconnected to what the society was, the external society was telling us to do. So yeah, I was rebellious. I just wanted to be free and happy, and I unapologetically lived my youthful life. I didn't want limitations. I didn't want restrictions. But at the same time, of course, academia is a very important part in the Sri Lankan community. So much to my dismay, I wasn't that much of a studious child, but I did study, I got my degree, and I started working. And of course, what do you want us to do after we've started working? You want us to get married. That's the next thing, right? So my parents were like, okay, Vali, time to get married. And I was like, excuse me, I found it quite hard to navigate my own freedom, but also navigate the cultural and social constructs that was built around me. And that raised so many questions for me. I questioned the religion, I questioned the rituals, and I'm sorry to say if this offends anyone, but I questioned everything the older generation was doing, because I was seeing people praying but not behaving well, people doing rituals but being unkind to people on the street. Didn't make sense. Why are we doing all of this if our humanity is not there? And so he said I was a seeker of truth, seeker of youth. What you meant to say is I was a seeker of truth. And although I enjoyed my life externally, I still wasn't satisfied. So when I started working, I was like, right, I need to take a sabbatical. I need to get out of this social construct. And I booked a one-way ticket to India on 2nd of October 2014. And my life changed. That was that first time I had space for my family, my friends, my community, my social construct, my job, everything that I had identified with or was told to identify with my whole life. I was able to have space from that. And it felt like I could finally breathe and now make choices for myself, really. So when I went to India, I actually landed in Rishikesh, which at the time I didn't know, but I was surrounded by the foothills of the Himalayas. I was surrounded by Mother Ganga, and the consciousness that was pervading that space, the consciousness that was pervading the mountains, the Ganga, and the people that were conventionally on the spiritual path there, I suddenly felt like I was home. My energy, my mind, my body, everything just shifted, it changed. All of that baggage I was carrying just felt like it was gone. And I stayed in Rishikesh for a month. I went to travel the world, but in the end I just stayed in India because I started studying yoga, and that's when I realized what a profound science. It's not a practice, it's not mythology. Yoga is science. What a profound science this is. And as I was studying, and the transformation that was happening within me on a daily basis was so profound that I just knew, this is it. This is my life path. This is what I need to do. And from then till this day, I've devoted my whole life to this path. And I went every year. I went for a few months. I stayed in India. I studied yoga. And I came back. And my dad's no longer here, but he's the one who spoke to the temple elders here and facilitated my teaching of yoga here. And it's been such an honor to be able to share that experience to people here. And also now learning music. I used to learn Carnatic music when I was younger, but I was so scared then. I was a scared little child who was being enforced to learn and perform and sit cross-legged when my legs would ache and I would get pins and needles, and I was worried about getting off the stage and not falling off. Do you know what I mean? Like, I couldn't sing then. My body wasn't at ease. My mind wasn't at ease. So now I've had this profound realization through yoga, and my body, my mind, everything was starting to clean. The energy was starting to clear itself. And now it felt like I was ready to learn Carnatic music, something I was always passionate about when I was a child. So learning music here now, I want to tell you one thing as well. I've never had a guru. People ask me, who's my guru? I said, every moment there's a new guru that shows itself to me. There's something to learn from every single human being in this world, not just human being, every single form that's here. And that's what the yogic teaching is teaching me, because ultimately it's to find the guru within ourselves, the guidance within ourselves, and our body and our mind needs to be prepared to find that and then connect to something bigger and deeper than us. And this culture is so profound. I've gone over my time, but I have to finish this quickly. But this culture is so profound because in every aspect, it facilitates self-realization. The rituals, the sitting, the talking. When Swami was speaking today, I was like, oh my God, I feel liberated listening. Nada, how profound is nada? And it's happening in every element all the time. But we need to be receptive to feel and understand that. And that's why yoga is an experiential path to understand this Saivism. And I think it's so important. And I want to use this platform because I'm so passionate about this. But so many of you in this audience as well think that yoga is asanas. Yoga is not asanas. Yoga is a life path. And within that life path, there are tools, which are asanas, pranayama, pratyahara, mantra, nada, everything. Even sitting there listening to becomes yoga as well if we start understanding it fully. And Carnatic music, our beautiful music, is just part and parcel of the whole experience. So I've gone well beyond, and I've definitely deviated off my speech, but I just wanted to say thank you. I think that we need to understand things scientifically so you can go back to your children and say, no, I'm not doing it because my mum and dad told me and it's a great thing to do. It's the mystic. It's inherent within our nature. God is within us, and sorry if I sound patronizing being a child saying it to adults, but this is my experience. I can't deviate from it. And if we understand it scientifically and are able to deliver that to the youth, then it becomes empowering. And please, let's not lose yoga to the West, because that's embarrassing. Do you know, yoga right now is being taken by the West because they're understanding the profound science of it. Neuroscience is getting closer to all of this ancient truth. And if we lose something that's so inherently in part of our culture, that would be such a shame. So don't preach it to anyone. Let's practice it. Let's understand it. Then you become a vehicle to share it anyway. And that is really my message today. And yeah, thank you. Thanks very much.